Salesforce Admin Boost. In this session, we're going to talk about Salesforce formula fields. I guess that as Salesforce implementers, most of you already implemented formula fields, but today we're going to fully understand how do they actually work behind the scenes, how they are compiled, how they're saved in the database or not, because they're not actually saved in the database. And especially we're going to understand how we can create better formula fields in order to ensure better performance. So let's see how we do that. When are formula fields calculated? Formula fields in Salesforce are calculated in real time whenever a record is accessed. This means that the value of the formula field is dynamically computed based on the current data in the record every time a user accesses it. This includes viewing records and list views, detail pages, reports, and any other place where the record is displayed. So it is very important for us to understand and remember that the value of a formula field is not actually saved in the database. It is calculated and presented whenever it's accessed in real time. How are formula fields compiled? The compilation of a formula field involves converting the formula syntax into database query that can be executed. The compile size of a formula field is the size of the formula in bytes, the formula that you as an implementer wrote, including all the fields, values, and formulaic references too. The maximum compiled size of a formula field is 15,000 bytes. Let's talk about formula size. Formula size is made up of two parts. The first is the formula syntax that you as an implementer wrote in the formula editor and saved it as the formula field. The second is the database query that's compiled from the formula syntax that you wrote and executed using the data in real time. The query can be much larger than the formula syntax that generated because it requests data from all the relevant fields involved in the formula field, and it performs operation behind the scenes. That's very important. How do we optimize formulas? So first of all, we want to reduce formula length, and then we want to reduce formula compile size. How do we do that? We do that by minimizing the references to other formula fields and minimizing the number of times formula functions are called. Let's talk about reducing formula length. So the maximum number of characters we can have in formula fields is 3,900 characters, and the maximum formula size when the formula field is saved is 4,000 bytes. So when your formula exceeds one of those limits, you will probably get one of the following errors, or you will get the formula is too long. In this case, it's 3,902 in this example characters. Maximum length is 3,900 characters. Or the size of the string is X. In this case, in this example, it's 5,385 bytes, but must not exceed 3,000 bytes. This means that the text you typed in is or too long. The text or includes more than 4,000 bytes, or it's too long. So let's see an example. In this example, this is the formula we used. We used an if, and we used it 4 times. We checked if a pick list value of the status is new, or if it's in progress, if it's completed, if it's on hold. And then we have in this formula field, we have 253 characters. If we write the formula slightly different using the case function instead of using if function many times, we are able to reduce the number of characters to 116 characters. So that's an example of how we reduce the length of the formula field. Now let's talk about reducing the formula compile size. So the most important thing you can do to reduce the formula compile size is to reduce the reference to other formula fields. Let's see an example here. So in this example, we defined a formula field called discount %. It checks if the amount is more than 100,000, and if it is, the discount % will be 0.1. Otherwise, it will be 0.05. Then we have another formula field called final price, and it checks the amount. It takes the amount minus the amount multiplied the discount percent that we defined in the first formula. That means that we're calling the first formula in the second formula. How do we optimize this? We have two options. Option one is to take the logic of formula one and just put it inside the second formula. Instead of calling another formula, we just take the logic and put it in the formula itself. Option two is to set the discount percent using a flow, as it will not change oftenly. The discount percent will probably not change oftenly. The amount probably will not change oftenly, and we need to keep this in mind. So we can leave the formula field as it is, just change the first formula field, the discount percent, instead of a formula field, set it as a regular discount, as a regular percent field, and set it using a flow. So those are two options, but keep in mind that there are some cases that you will need to leave it as formula fields. Those are best practices, what we're talking about, but keep in mind that you don't need to always use best practices. You need to think when it's right to use best practices and when you're not able to use best practices. Let's talk about minimize the number of time formula functions are called. So in this example, we can see an if. We have an if function 3 times, and it checks if the billing country contains a value. The first row checks if it contains a USA value, the second if it's Canada, and the third if it's Mexico. And then if it does contain one of those values, it sets the value of the formula field as North America. Otherwise, it sets it as other. So we can see here how we optimize the formula. We only used the if once, and it checks if the billing country contains USA, Canada, and Mexico. We just wrote it differently. So instead of calling many if functions and many contain functions, we just called an if function once and a contain function once. Let's talk about formula versus workflow updates. So consider using workflow to update a field instead of a formula field if you have one of the following. So if the calculation is too complex or exceeded the formula size limit, and you're trying to build a formula and you see it's too complicated, you can go with a flow. It's okay. The second thing that you need to consider is if the value does not change oftenly. So there's no point of having a formula field, because formula field is computed dynamically. You can consider using a flow in this case. If there's a need to present the value on many records, for example, a very large list view that needs to present all the values of the records in the formula field, so in that case, you may consider using flows instead, because it will calculate all the values of all the records at the same time, and the user experience may be slow. And the last one is if the value is used in an apex or a flow, then you may consider just putting it in the flow or in the apex and calculating it there, instead of having it as a formula field that will be only calculated and relevant when the apex or the flow will run. So we spoke about in this session about formula fields behavior, the real-time calculation. It's not actually saved in the database, it is recalculated whenever the record is accessed. We spoke about minimizing formula length, minimizing references to other formula fields inside the formula fields, minimizing the number of times the formula functions are called, and formula versus workflow. Keep in mind that you need to consider which tool to use when you configure your org. So thank you very much.